Buying things secondhand has always seemed logical to me. Sometimes I tell myself that I like to do it to reduce waste and protect the environment. But if I'm being completely honest, it's probably because I like to save money. So when it came time to get a new computer, I went straight to Craigslist. After an hour of searching and reading up on the specs, I decided on a 2-year-old laptop with a small crack in the screen. It was in great shape otherwise. Part of me felt like I was getting a good deal because of the obvious damage, because otherwise I would be wondering why anybody would sell. At least with this one, there was an obvious reason for the deal. I called the seller and we set up a time to make the trade. $500 is what we agreed on. I tried to barter a bit, but he wasn't having it. That's fine though, because $500 is a fair price anyway. I hit the road after work to pick it up. My car is super fast and everyone thinks I'm cool when they see me driving. As I approached the spot where we decided to meet, which was the parking lot of a shopping mall near my house, I noticed a young man with a blue baseball hat holding a laptop. He was about medium height with a bored look on his face. Nothing seemed amiss as I pulled into the lot. We briefly exchanged pleasantries, then I gave him the money and he gave me the computer. Everything was good. It seemed like a usual Craigslist transaction, like I had done many times before. I was eager to get home to start setting it up. When I got home, I set it on my desk and pressed the on button. It powered up and everything worked fine. It seemed that the previous owner had done a reset, so I went ahead and installed some of my favorite programs. Google Chrome, VLC Media Player, the usual things. After a few hours, I turned it off and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the sound of the loudest laptop fan I had ever heard. It sounded like a plane taking off. I thought I turned that thing off, I grumbled to myself. I pushed and held the power button until the noise stopped, then I went back to bed. The next day, I was browsing the internet and I thought I saw the light next to the camera lens flicker. It was subtle, but I was pretty sure of what I saw, so I decided to dig deeper. I'm not very tech savvy, so I took it to a repair technician at the mall. He ran a virus scan and some other checks. After a few minutes, he told me that the computer was infected with a type of virus that tracks keystrokes in addition to hijacking the computer's camera. This was all controlled by the hacker remotely. This particular type of spyware is designed to gather information about a target and to be used as blackmail. Luckily, I only had the laptop for a day before I became suspicious, so they didn't get much. Luckily, I never signed into my online banking. Later that day, I filed a police report and gave them the computer. Not surprisingly, the ad was taken down and the number that I called was for a burner phone, so it's unlikely that they'll catch this guy. It's disturbing that there are people out there who will do things like this. I've bought many things from strangers on the internet, and this is the first time that anything like this has happened. People put their lives on their devices, so it pays to be careful. If you do need to buy a used laptop, make sure to do a full reset before using it. As for me, I'll be adding electronic devices to my short list of things that I buy new. Underwear is also on the list, just so you know. Music has always been a passion of mine. When I was in high school, I don't think I had a single friend who didn't play an instrument. Guitar was my instrument of choice, and I loved every part of it. My friends and I would often get together and make really bad-sounding music. Horrible as we were, it's what we did, and I wouldn't change it for the world. When I grew up, I did what most people do, and got a quote-unquote real job working for an accounting firm. I would still play guitar at home now and then, but I had lost touch with most of the guys that I played with when I was younger. That's why I turned to the classified section of Craigslist. They had a ton of postings for bands looking for musicians and people looking to form new bands. After reading through a few postings on my computer, one in particular caught my eye. Seeking lead guitarist for rock cover band is what it said. That was perfect for me because I was not looking for anything too serious, just a way to rock out on the weekends. I replied to the email, and less than a minute later, I got a response from a guy named John with a list of songs they were working on. They were all well within my skill level, and I'd even played some of them before, so I was fairly confident that I would make the band. John sent me his address and also gave me his phone number. The band practiced in John's basement, he told me on the phone. We agreed to get together the following evening for an audition. When the time came, I was excited to play some music with new people. It had been a boring day at work, and I needed something to blow off some steam. The sun was just dipping below the horizon as I entered John's neighborhood. It was just off a busy road, but it had a real suburban feel. I was paying close attention to the street numbers while I slowly passed. Arriving at the house, I noticed that no lights were on. It was completely dark. I thought I was in the wrong place, so I took out my phone and called John. "Hey, I think I'm here. Are you home?" "Hey, yeah, just go in through the garage." I gazed over at the garage, and I could see that the sliding door was about a third open at the bottom. A strange request, I thought, but I decided to do it anyway. "Sure, I'll be right there." Guitar in hand, I walked up the driveway and stopped in my tracks when I noticed something. Someone was standing on the other side of the garage door. I could see his shoes. Trying not to panic, I said, "I think I'm gonna take off. Thanks for everything." With no warning at all, the door flew open, and an older man with an angry look on his face stood staring at me. I turned around to run to my car. I could hear him chasing me as I struggled to unlock the door. Fortunately, I managed to get in and lock the door before he could reach me. My foot slammed on the gas, and I got out of there. The next day, I reported the incident to the police. They informed me that the house had been vacant for just under a year and that the owner was out of the country. So many questions remained unanswered. Who was the man in the garage? What were his plans for me? What could he possibly have to gain? I still believe that Craigslist is a great way to meet people, but it is important to listen to your gut. If something feels off, get out of there while you still can, because there are some folks out there that you don't want to meet. My name is Josh, and this happened in the summer between my second and third years of college. Like most students, I was working during this time. My job was at a call center doing sales over the phone. To say that I hated it would be an understatement. The fluorescent lights seemed to slowly drain my soul with every minute that I spent in my cubicle. That's why I quit after less than a month. Although I was happy to be out of that place, my joy was short-lived. School is expensive, and I needed a way to keep up with my bills. While browsing the internet, I decided to see what I could find on Craigslist. After sending out a few applications, I checked out the odd jobs section. I was hoping to find something outdoors, maybe mowing lawns or some kind of yard work. One ad in particular caught my attention. Seeking help with a home renovation. 1 day of work to tear down a wall on the upper level of an older house. Pay is $15 an hour for 8 hours, is what it said. $15 per hour was way above minimum wage at the time, and getting paid to smash a wall seemed like a great deal to me. I replied to the ad and crossed my fingers. When I woke up the next morning, I checked my email on my phone. Excitement flowed through my body when I saw the reply. It said that I had the job. The homeowner was named Brad, and we agreed that I would head over the next morning. Brad's house was in an old but charming neighborhood. Most of the houses were probably over 100 years old. Tall trees lined the narrow street, casting long shadows from the morning sun. When I arrived at the house, I walked up the stone path and knocked on the door, which was already slightly open. A tall and hefty man opened the door with a warm smile. He was probably in his early 30s. "You must be Josh," he said. "That's right. Are you Brad?" I replied. "Yes, sir. Let me show you around." I stepped into the foyer and he gave me a rundown on what he expects me to do for the day. Brad had a very friendly demeanor and seemed like a genuinely nice guy. Even though I was alone in a stranger's house, I felt at ease. There are 2 bedrooms upstairs that I'm going to join into a single large room. I just need you to tear down the wall. The contractors are coming in next week to finish the work, he explained to me. Sounds good to me. I nodded in agreement. I guess it was cheaper to have the work done beforehand. It made sense, and I was happy to have the opportunity. Brad led me up the stairs, and I followed him into one of the rooms where there was a sledgehammer and an axe. Well, that's it. Brad pointed at the wall, smiling. I'll be at work, but you can call me if you need anything, he said. Sure, thanks, I replied. After Brad left the room, I picked up the sledgehammer and lifted it over my shoulder to get a feel for the weight. Looking out the window, I watched as Brad's car drove away from the house. I was all alone. With each swing of the sledgehammer, the pile of debris at the base of the wall grew larger. It wasn't long before a hole formed in the plaster. That's when I noticed that there was something in the wall. It looked like an old rolled-up rug covered in dust from the crushed plaster. I leaned in and pushed it with the hammer. To my horror, it turned over, revealing what looked like a mummified face. I absolutely panicked. My body filled with adrenaline, and I bolted out of the front door. Racing down the street, my mind was racing even faster. Was Brad a murderer? Why would he hire me to tear down a wall if he hid a body there? Nothing made sense. When I was a safe distance from the house, I called the police. They did an investigation and brought me up to speed afterwards. According to their experts, the body had been dead for at least 40 years, ruling out Brad since he would not have been born at the time. Over the next few months, details of the case emerged, and I watched it unfold on the news. It turned out that the house had once belonged to a serial killer who was active in my city in the 1980s. He died in prison several years before this incident. I never spoke to Brad again, but I can only imagine that he was as shaken as I was. It's disturbing to think that he was living in that house for years before the discovery. If there's one positive that came out of this, it's that the family of the victim can finally have closure.